Howdy, and welcome back to You've Got People Problems, the podcast where we dig into all the messy people challenges behind running a business. I'm your host, Melissa Ortiz with Activate Human Capital Group, and this is episode 19. Today we're talking about one of our company's core values at Activate, meet them where they are. And I couldn't think of a better guest to unpack this with than Paisley Coxsey, a fellow people first leader, people strategist, and someone who's worked with a wide range of personalities, work styles, and leadership quirks. This conversation gets into the nuance of what it means to flex, not fake, your leadership style. We talk about the challenges of working in high-stress client interactions, how to build trust with quirky personalities, and the line between adjusting your approach and losing yourself in the process. In this episode, we'll explore why meet them where they are doesn't mean people-pleasing, tips for adapting your language and approach to different styles, how to build bridges with clients and team members who think differently than you, and why a little intentional flexibility can go a long way in leadership. If you've ever struggled with how to connect with someone who operates in a totally different manner than you do, this one's for you. Let's get to it.
Paisley, I'm so excited to have you with me for You've Got People Problems. And the topic we're covering is meet them where they are, which is something, of course, I love because it's one of our company core values. But we've talked a lot about what makes quirky people tick and how we approach that differently in our roles for our different type of clients. And so I'm just looking forward to this discussion. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I know some people love this, some people don't. I'm a big fan of it. So I'm excited to talk about it and share some experiences and stories. And I'm excited to hear yours as well. So this is exciting. Thanks for having me.
And I think meet them where they are. I think to start this discussion is this does not mean you have to change your entire personality for every person you interact with, right? This is some tips and tricks on how do you moderately change the way you use the language, the way you interact, just to make people feel comfortable with you and help them get what they need from your interactions so it can be effective together.
Definitely. And it's so important with meeting anybody new, right? We've all got to meet a little bit there in the middle so that we can, help each other and do things together. So I'm excited for the topic.
Good, good. So I want to pause before we jump into the content and go up a level and tell us a little bit about your work, what you do. This word fractional is new to some people, so I'd love for you to define that as you go. So the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about your world and how you help clients.
Awesome. Well, I'm in the fractional COO integrator space. I was an integrator for 7 years with my full-time company. So really love all things EOS, but I really just want to step in and help businesses. So fractional, I feel like a lot of people say, oh, it's similar to contract work, but I would say it's very different. Contract is a period of time typically and set budget. Fractional, you're really stepping in as that individual for the company. So that's why topics like today are so important. If I'm stepping in with a company, I quickly need to build trust, build that relationship, and also be able to help them. And so much of that is having that trust in me and vice versa. So I'm out there to help business owners really take their business to the next level, and things that they can't do on their own, let me step in, use my expertise and help you get it done. So I'm looking to, 10x companies, not step in for a company that just wants me to keep the status quo. So I'm excited to help businesses grow, and yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So I'm going to take a stab here and say, for people who don't know EOS or this word integrator, this is really the operations right hand to an owner of the company, somebody who needs to get out of their own way. They know they're doing too many roles, and they would love to be able to hand someone their ideas and the vision and have someone bring those visions to life, because that's something I think as leaders, we often have too many ideas and too much enthusiasm and not enough people to help see that vision and see it through. And so I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work with you and know you personally, because I think the way that you meet people where they are, the way that you understand their vision and what they're trying to accomplish has been really fun for me to learn about.
Awesome. Yeah. I always say, like, if a business owner has an idea and they want to get it done and they're actually passionate about it, let me step in and help get that, because I trust the visionary. I trust the person that came up with the idea. And now it's really just building the foundation to get it done. So it's exciting work, and I want to help as many business owners achieve that dream, whatever it is for them, that I can. So it's
well,
fun.
thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mel Ortiz, and I'm obsessed with helping people create dream teams, where everybody's in the right seat, they're engaged, they love what they do, and they stay and perform at high levels. Because what I know of this space is it's not just good for the business, it's not just good for our customers, but it's also good for the individual because they go home at night with more energy for their family, their faith, their physical well-being, their community, whatever's important to them, and they perform at higher levels for us and our customers. So I love this space. I love this discussion, and I think we should jump right in.
I love it. And quick note, if you aren't already working with Melissa, please do, because what she has to help you and your team, like if you're not using it, you're not putting your team up for success. So reach out if you haven't already.
Thank you. I was with the Vistage group on that note. I was with the Vistage group 2 weeks ago, and one of the participants told me that the tools that I gave them were the most practical and tactical that they had seen from a speaker in a long time. And I think that's one of the things I really value about the work that I do and the way I bring work to clients is do this, try this. I don't like people who bring a lot of theories and big ideas. It's like, just tell me what to do to get better. That's where the rubber meets the road. And so I think that's probably a hallmark of the way that I work is it's like, let's just do something together. We don't need to pontificate about what could be. It's let's jump in and find some early wins that.
Yes, I love it. It's so important.
Okay, so this idea of meeting them where they are. There's, I think, everything in life is on a spectrum. One spectrum is I am who I am. I am purposely polarizing. And if you don't like it, tough, hit the road, kick rocks. Other end of the spectrum is I am a complete chameleon. I dated someone like this. And he could be anything you needed him to be.
Oof.
And it's eerie because you don't,
Yes.
What is the Hamilton line? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. You need to have some middle ground. And so I think it's neither. You can't be rigid. You can't be eternally flexible. People don't find their way to trust you in either of those spaces. And so I thought we'd talk through a couple of scenarios, Paisley. Here's the ones that I have in mind, and you can add to these.
Awesome.
One is we have a new hire who wants to hit the ground running and make an impact in the business. So this discussion of how do I meet my new team and my new organization where they are and provide value, because that's how I'm going to find my path forward here and really stick, which is what the organization wants and what the person wants. Nobody wants to start a job and then wash out in the first 90 days. That's one. Same situation, except it's a person who's been promoted internally and they want to prove that they're worthy of this promotion. From the outside looking in, what about a vendor or partner that's been brought on from the outside that wants to do great work, develop raving fans and some great referral partners? And then let's say in your situation or mine, a fractional person or a consultant who wants to do the same thing. We want to make a long-term impact. We want to be there for the long haul. We may not be a full-time employee, but we see ourselves when we talk about the organization, it's we, not you. Yep. And so I think those situations lend themselves to different types maybe of meet them where they are, or maybe different stories we have in our brains.
Yes.
Different people listening to this might be coming to this discussion with a different lens, and maybe that meets many of those.
I love it. And all things we've experienced too, right? So we can speak real life examples to these. So
yeah,
makes sense.
I love that. Okay, so do you have one you want to start with, or should we just go down the list?
Let's go down the list.
Okay. So new hire, fresh job. Let's envision ourselves some job we first started, and we're looking around trying to figure out, okay, am I like these people? Am I a culture fit? How do I fit in and make a real impact here without rocking the boat for those of us who are maybe more dominant? Or how do I lean in enough to show up and really hit people's radar if I'm a more collaborative, gentle person?
Yes, yes. Well, my gut instinct, and I think of this from like a managerial perspective, if I've got a new employee coming in, I want to make sure that they can be as successful as possible. And part of that is utilizing assessments, understanding each other, understanding teams. And so I think specifically for a new hire, that's so key. Like that's such a quick way to understand your team and how they work and how you can best connect and, step in and be a part of the team. So I think that's a really big one. If I'm going to work with a new team, that's so important for me too. So I think things like that, just across the board of all of these that we're talking about, are so important for that. Then I think, especially for a new hire, it's really asking questions and getting to know first, I would say, the role and the importance of what you're doing, but then also the expectations for that. And so all of that just kind of allows you to see where the company is at, where that manager's at, where that team member's at, so that you can meet them there in the middle. Like you're saying, are they somebody that is really rigid and it's hard to connect with? Well, you don't want to be this big bubbly personality that's going to frustrate them, right? And if it's somebody that's big and bubbly, okay, well, we need a little bit of reality too. So I think it's all about kind of balancing that. And if you got somebody in the middle, great, but it's really understanding those people, understanding how to best work with them and approach them. And I think that really sets that, new employee up for success.
Okay, so here are a couple things that I heard you say that really resonated with me and what I've seen in this space is the assessment can be so valuable. I've got one client who they share with every new hire the CEO's PI profile. So here's who's leading this company. He's super dominant. He has a very low patience factor. He has big ideas, but he's not super outgoing and bubbly. He's kind of stern. So know that going in, that if he doesn't say hello to you as he walks by, it's not because he doesn't like you. It's because his brain is focused on the horizon. And so the thing I love about assessments is it helps us forgive each other our trespasses. That's who Fred is, not, oh, Fred doesn't like me. Make it about us. It's like, oh, it's just okay. And so whether, I grew up with the Gallup StrengthsFinder, I'm obsessed with the StrengthsFinder. I love predictive index for its ease. I know you use Kolbe a lot. There are so many good assessments out there. Pick one. Who cares?
Yes.
I mean, astrological sign might be a little out there for some of your employees, but pick something that feels relevant to you and use that. Because I think if we can give the shorthand way to connect with your peers to a new hire, that has a lot of value. And then the other thing that you said that really resonated, I thought, was around asking questions to get clear on that role and the expectations of the role. And really the context. Where are we and where do we want to be? Because if you've got the why behind your role and the where we want to go, gosh, the contributions you can focus on. And those are sometimes questions your peers that are not new maybe want to ask, but feel embarrassed to because they should know already. So that was one thing that really struck me from what you said, Paisley.
Yeah, I think I'm in the position where I have one of my clients has a number of new employees starting. And so for me, I mean, my first conversation with them on the onboarding is let's walk through everybody's Kolbe results because I want to tell you how you can work best with the team. And then some of those quirks you point out as well too, like this doesn't mean this, it's just how this person is and things like that. So I think just having that overall clarity of, especially if it's a smaller team, really how everybody works best is really important. And then, like you said, the questions, it's like, please ask all the questions you can think to ask because I might have done a great outline and might have this process documented, but I probably forgot something that is going to give you more clarity. So please ask. So I think you got to ask and then hopefully have a manager or somebody in that role that's supportive with those asks as well to really make sure their team is being as successful and ready to go as possible.
And it's interesting the things that we pick up on through these assessments about our team members. Like I have a team member, Jennifer, who's very, very, very detail oriented. I am moderately detail oriented. And so I try to close out every meeting with her with, what did I miss? What else do you need? And she knows that's coming. So she's keeping notes of the whole time of what we're talking about. And then she knows that she has the opportunity to go a little deeper. And it helps her forgive me for not being as detailed as she is. But it also gives her this opening that she knows I expect her to have questions. Not that it's an annoyance, it's a welcome thing. And then I have one team member who's very high in focus in the StrengthsFinder language. And so we gave him permission a long time ago to go into beast mode. And so he'll put on his headset. And we know that when Kevin has his headset on, he's not available. He's elbow deep in some programming or something that he really needs to concentrate on. And if we distract him, it's going to send him back a couple steps and have to refocus. And so just those gifts that we can give to people of, I get you, I see you. And that's really them.
And like you said, it's pick one. Pick which assessment resonates with you most and how you know you can work best with your team because there's so many great ones out there and I've taken 5 or 6 of them and I've learned something valuable out of them. But it's like without those, you are literally going in blind and you can only learn so much in an interview. You can only learn so much the first 90 days with somebody, but these assessments give you the opportunity to successfully work with them right out of the gate. And these aren't exactly who you are, right? But it gives an indication of how you work best and how you need support. And in an ideal situation, this is how you would proceed in your job. And so just knowing that and knowing how to best work with people, I mean, what better thing could you do as a manager or a business owner than picking one and using one because of the value that you'd get from it. So
Integrate it. And I think some of the valuable things, if I'm thinking from the seat of I'm coming into a new job, and I think some of the really valuable tips I've heard is around like for asking your manager, like, how do I get on your shit list? What are some of your pet peeves
that's a
that I
good
should
one.
be aware of? And what are some things that I can do that will knock it out of the park? And I think those, if we have those in mind for the people around us, the three people we work most closely with, gosh, what a valuable when someone says to me, whether it's my husband or a team member, like, I'm on it, I'm going to do that immediately. Next. The next thing I do is going to be pick up the phone and make that phone call. I'm like, oh, you love me. You see me. You hear my urgency in everything that I do. And
Yes.
those little phrases, it's amazing how endearing and how heard someone on the other side can feel if you're speaking that language that they naturally, that you're on that frequency that they resonate on.
Yeah, I love that. The first thing when you were saying that that came to mind for me is like email. Like if it's important, email it to me, but otherwise like let's do a Teams message. And if you're CCing me, there better be a like some of those things are like these daily things in the role that I like to point that out when I'm starting to work with a new team. It's like if it's urgent, send a message. If it's something that can wait, send it in an email. If it's important, let's flag it. But if you CC me on something, I put it in a folder and I don't look at it. So some of that is just some of these basic questions that outside of the assessment you should be asking, right? So, because there's more too on top of that. So I like that. I've got to incorporate that more when I'm starting to work with new people because everybody works a little bit differently. So taking it a step beyond can really put you for success in the beginning. And like you said, it's going to mean a lot to them when you're doing that like day one, right? And you're not figuring this out 6, 9 months later of, oh, this is what they mean or this is what they're looking for. So I think that's a really great question to add in the mix for anybody working with anybody new or getting to know somebody new.
I really like what you said around some of the more tactical communication based things, because I don't think we often enough when we're onboarding someone intentionally share, okay, here's how we communicate. Teams first. Email is a long-term documentation play. If you get a text, you better respond within an hour. We expect email response within 24 hours and Teams responses within whatever,
Mm-hmm.
the morning or the afternoon. And if we can get some norms around those for our team members, it helps them know how to prioritize all these
Definitely.
different inputs of communication that they're getting, and we can have a shared experience there. So I
Yeah.
like that tactical nature.
And I know it's part of like the EOS space, but I would have never thought of creating like that communication outline and document without that type of framework around it. And so I think any business should do that because it's a great way for somebody stepping in to know the expectations without having to ask questions. And it is so important and such a part of the culture if it's constantly being brought up and communicated because then everybody's following it, everybody's doing it. And that was a really big thing at my 10-year job was the communication aspect because we were all remote. And I mean, 10 years ago, remote work, I guess it was probably 14 years ago now when I started there, was a thing that nobody was doing. And so following that communication guide was so important. So for me, it's always stepping in. This is how I'd like to be communicated with, but I'm stepping into your environment. So let me know how you do things and I'll follow it. But I think any company needs to define that because, again, it's just another opportunity to set your employees up for success. But also just communication is important. And so defining that, even if it's as silly as emails need to be responded to within 24 hours, you're still setting that precedent and everybody knows that's important. So
Then we can hold people accountable to something that we have clarity around. And
exactly.
it's amazing to me once in a while you have people you interact with that you feel like you just are not like you're saying similar words, but no one's being understood.
Mhm.
And it's crazy how like different desires for like I have a TLDR rule. Too long, don't read. If you send me a long
Yes.
email, I will
Yes.
leave it in my email inbox because I want to read it. I really care about you and I want to read it, but I can't process that information in the 4 minutes between the meeting I just finished and the meeting I'm starting. And if you can put it in bullet points for me, it is speaking
Yep.
my communication love language. And so just getting these tidbits out of people, that's why if we go back to the assessments, that's where some
Mhm.
of those clues can come from of people who need
Definitely.
lots of detail versus minimal detail, high level overview and permission to proceed.
Yes.
get us.
Well, and even you saying that, I'm like, I know you're Kolbe, and I think you're like a 5 or 6 on FactFinder, and those are the bullet people. So like those things are so important. And I would tell, the individual I worked with for 10 years, your novel emails, can we just have a phone call instead? Because that is a lot for me to read and digest. And I know it's important to you and I want to take it in. And sometimes, it's like those people are brain dumps, but it's like, okay, this is too much for me to take it in an email. Let's talk through it. And so even some of that can help, because I'd rather have a 5-minute conversation than try to dig into your really long email. But I think this is also really important. And I know we'll talk about vendors, but that's so important for any vendor you're working with too, is having those communication expectations, because within the organization, we could assume it's 24 hours for an email response, but theirs might be, 72 hours if it's a web developer or something like that. So I think to set yourself up for success in those relationships, not having some type of conversation around that expectation is really setting both sides up for frustration. So I think that's an important key with those relationships as well.
And if we come back to where we started on this topic of, I'm a new hire, I want to make an impact. I want to secure my role, set myself up for early successes and potential promotions or raises. Or if we start asking all these questions, it makes us look really dang smart,
Yes.
really committed and engaged. And you are typically the most engaged you're going to be when you start a new job, because you want to make that positive impression. And so having the courage to ask those questions and find the quirks in the people is some of the investments, the best investments you can make in the first
Definitely.
30, 60 days.
Yeah. And like the topic of this, that's the fastest way to meet them where they're at, right? And where they are and how they work. I mean, asking these questions, if these things aren't defined, ask the question, what's the policy around this? How can I best communicate with you? There's so many other questions you can ask, I'm sure, but all of those set that foundation of meeting people's expectations. So much of that can be unsaid by the individual, but asking that, like, of course, yes. Okay. If I text you, this is what I expect. If I call you, this is what I expect. And all of that's so important. So it means a lot to the individual that did it, right? So
yeah. And how often do we not even really know our own expectations until someone asks us?
Yes.
I mean, you said the word policy and my hackles kind of went up, because I think about the clients you and I so often work with, and there's no policy, there's preferences, there's norms. And so I think if we can approach with curiosity, say, hey, what are your preferences? What are the norms around here? I noticed that we send a lot of emails. Is this because we like a lot of documentation? Have we not really started using a Slack or a Teams? I just want to make sure I have the why behind it. And sometimes the why is that we've never taken the time to enforce, oh, we did set up Slack and no one ever made us use it. And it's like, well, could I be the Slack champion? That might be a way to make an impact, because we think this is the future, but behavior change is hard. I mean, you and I were talking the other day, Paisley, about changing email addresses and being able to use the new one versus the old one. Take this muscle memory that we have to break.
Yes. Very true. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And it's all just about, especially with like Slack, like you're saying, if that's a little thing you could do to set up that nobody else has taken the time, what an impact you can make too as a new employee really quickly. And the buy-in and the trust they have for you to set those things up, whether it's Slack or Asana or something else that they're not using that can be successful, like that will be seen as a benefit as well. So what a great idea for an employee to ask and figure out.
Yeah. How many systems do we all have as organizations that we're not getting the full utility out of? I mean, one of my things I always champion with my PI clients is you're not getting the value you're paying for. And my job every quarter is to connect with you and say, okay, what about this? Are we using it for this use case? And how do you keep using the same investment you've already made and get exponentially more out of that discussion?
Definitely.
And
so
of course, that's one of my favorite.
Yes.
Okay, so let's transition to somebody who's already been with the organization. They don't see the forest for the trees anymore. They're already in the mix. And now they're on a new team and they want to make an impact there. How do we think about meeting them where they are a little differently? Because none of these people are foreign to us now, but how do we go a little deeper? What are some of your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think something that when you're in that role, especially a new role, say you step into a management role now and maybe you're managing your previous team, you have to see everything in a little bit of a different view. So maybe you know those assessments, but now you have to think of how that applies now in this new situation. And learning what that individual needs from you, say as a manager, or maybe you're stepping onto a management team and now you have to understand what those people are expecting and needing from you. So I think it's really important to still ask a lot of the, maybe not the, how often should I be responding to emails or communication pieces, but really understanding in the organization what they're expecting from you in the new role and how you can support them. Because I think specifically like managers stepping in and now managing their team, I stepped into that before and it was like, okay, well, I know how I supported you in the same line, right? Okay, I can take that sales call from you. Okay, well, I can still do that for your manager, but what's that next level that I can do to support you? And my biggest thing is if you're in that type of position is how can I best support my team with the growth that they want? If they want to eventually be in the seat that I am in, how can I mentor and help them with that? So depending on the situation, there's different questions you can ask, but I think it's really just the end of the day, figuring out how you can best work with them, best support them in the new role and help them get whatever growth and new position they're looking for as well. So
Yeah. I like your first suggestion of, okay, I've been on a team and now I'm managing this team. I've been promoted and I have this, that's a hard one to make because if it's the people that are used to being at your level and now you're at a different level, that is, you have to take a little step back. You have to create a little space, but also you were talking a little bit about kind of alluding to servant leadership. How do I support you? What barriers can I remove? What frustrations have we shared as a team that I can start tackling with a different position of power? But the other question, there's a great book called How to Say Anything to Anyone. And there's this phrase that managers can use in this book that I just absolutely loved. And it goes like this. So I assume as your manager, my job is to help you be effective, to help you see barriers you might not see, and to help you get things out of the way so you can keep growing.
mm-hmm.
Do I have your permission to tell you if I see things that are getting in your way, Paisley? And I think you can even say it with a little uncertainty as a manager, but if you get that permission up front
mm-hmm.
and then you see something that needs to be addressed, you get to go, Paisley, remember how we talked about the thing where I said you gave me permission to tell you if something was in your way? Well, I think today's the day we have to talk about that. And whether it's anything as silly as body odor or somebody's using the word like too often, I've run up against those multiple times in my career.
Yes.
It makes it so much more like they'll usually laugh and say, yeah, I remember, go ahead, hit me with it, right? They're prepared. And then it's like, oh, just that? I had an employee who I loved. She actually worked for me in a different capacity. Then she came to work for me in my consulting organization. And I made her do an intake interview. And she said the word like 241 times in her interview because I was keeping tallies. And I said, I love you. I want you on my team. And we have to fix this. And it was like this upfront contract that we were going to do that. So anytime she would see me making tally marks on my paper, guess what she would do?
Stop. No more likes.
Stop and pause and go, note taken. I wouldn't have to say a word because she saw what I was doing.
Yes.
She knew what it meant. And she gathered herself. And it was amazing the professionalism that she gained just by removing these non-words from her vocabulary. And so I think that one example you gave was really poignant because it's a critical element. Whether that team is new to us, sometimes most of the time a lot easier. But even if they're not, we can ask permission, even if we're super awkward about it, gain that permission and then use it later for their benefit.
Exactly. And I think that especially in those specific scenarios where somebody from your team is stepping up is so important. But I think just management in general, you're stepping into a new company. Like you should be doing these same things. And I think, 20 years ago, it was this rigid, hard managers. And if you're not hitting quotas, then you're going to fire. And that's not the culture of companies anymore. And those that run that way are a dying breed, right? Like now it's everybody wants to be supportive. We want you to grow. We want you here. I know you talk about it a lot, but going and having to replace somebody that leaves is so expensive and people don't realize that. And you don't want to fire somebody either. So the best you can do to support your team and help them grow, the better. And so if anybody that asks me, like, what would you say to a manager? I'm like, you need to be asking these questions. And if you're not doing those things, your team isn't going to be successful either. And so I think asking those questions and being open and realizing although it's not a friendship, you can be a friendly manager to somebody and that's the key to having those uncomfortable conversations too, right? Is you've set that precedent of if I'm bringing this up, it's because I care and I want to help you and this matters. And for you to be the best employee you can be, we need to have this conversation. And I think without laying down that foundation, you're setting your team up for failure and yourself. And so just think as especially more millennials are stepping into management, it's so important to keep that in mind because so many of us are so much more relationship based than, maybe older generations. And so it's okay to maintain that and be a manager. And in fact, it makes you more successful.
And there's this phrase I love called hard on accountability, soft on people.
Mm-hmm.
How can we be gentle with the humans we're supporting and expect a high level of performance? That's the real balance that as leaders and managers we have to hit. There's a great book called Leadership and Self-Deception that really goes into that. And how do we approach hard on accountability, soft on people? And it's masterful because that's the pinnacle of leadership, I think.
Definitely. And again, back to the EOS space, but any business should have a scorecard, should have an accountability chart. A scorecard is such an easy way to point out in a week of, hey, you're behind on this. We need you to, get caught up or whatever it might be. And it allows that important things are being discussed regularly in a warm environment where we can have the conversation. An accountability chart, reviewing that quarterly. Are we still on track for these things? Are you still at the level that you were 90 days ago? Like a lot of that is really important and allows a leader to really thrive because I can hold you accountable simply by you filling in a number every week. And we don't have to have some uncomfortable conversation because you're going into that meeting knowing it's going to be brought up and I'm going to bring it up and we're going to figure out a solution. So there's so many tools managers can use, but it all gets really back to that meet people where they're at. Okay, you're red 3 weeks in a row. What's going on? How can I help you? Is it something outside of work? And allows you to have those conversations and get back to all of that because things can shift with people as well. And so having those conversation points regularly allows us to resolve those and get that employee back to where they should be.
Because some employees are really vocal about here's what's going on in my life, and some are very private. And for the private ones, we still need some semblance of knowledge of what's going on in their environment. Like I had a team member who was suddenly just not meeting the mark of performance. And we were walking into a very serious performance conversation. And I took a moment to ask, how's everything going? And what they told me in that instance was, I've had a really major health scare that I've been dealing with for the last couple of weeks. And my heart just went, whoa, performance conversation, lean into this human. And here, there's a serious issue going on. No wonder they're not performing.
Yes.
And so rather than, jumping down their throat with performance, I had this opportunity to meet them where they were as a human. And then we could look at performance next. So, okay, what do we need to get back on track for? What support do you need? And I could have really tarnished that relationship. And because I'm pretty like business first, I care, but I kind of expect people to tell me because I think they know I care. And when
Yes.
they don't, I'm not the best person about asking. And so I was so grateful to my heart that I had taken a moment to ask because I could have just bulldozed right over that and not known. And
Well, in so many of those instances too, it can be somebody that is open and sharing, but suddenly this is something so close to them that they won't. Like I had a team member that was always very open and honest, and suddenly it's like she's not responding to emails, she's not responding to messages, she's missing demos. What's going on? You find out she's incredibly sick and pregnant and didn't want to share that she was pregnant because it was early on. And it's like, oh my gosh, I understand, but like, tell me how I can help you. Oh, how can I step in? Everybody in the team wanted to step up, but it went from like you're saying this, what's going on? This is our top performer, and suddenly things are slipping, and she's always open when things are happening. It's like all hands on deck. Like, how can we help you through this time? Because that's what we want to do. And so it's also important to know even those that might normally speak up in those types of situations might not. And so just another thing in your tool belt as a manager is ask those questions and understand that. And of course, maybe it's not always related to something in there. It does have to be that corrective conversation, but I'd say specifically if an employee is suddenly slipping and hadn't been before, there probably is something deeper going on that will help explain why maybe they're slacking a little bit.
yeah, because one of my core beliefs is always that nobody wants to suck at work. No
Yes,
one's
I agree.
trying to underperform. It's what are the barriers? What's going on? Have I not been clear? And we kind of have to take ownership of that as managers, as leaders.
Definitely. 100%.
So, okay, I'm going to transition us to, I've got a new vendor or partner that really wants to do good work. We think there's a good fit here. We're going to try it out. We get started and there's a hiccup or a frustration that could have been avoided if they really had this meet them where they are rather than following our process. That's really what our meet them where they are value is about. Both our team and our clients is, how do we use their lingo? How do we use their timelines, their whatever is in their context to fit our work into? And so tell me a little bit about how you think about that with vendors you're bringing on for clients to make sure that there's an effective match. Because if you're making the referral, it's a reflection on you too if it doesn't go well.
Definitely. I think the biggest thing, I know we talked just communication in general, but understanding what that looks like and what they're going to be delivering. Some of that ultimately is like, okay, well, that's not the right vendor, right? Like if this is the expectation, well, I know what my client or my company is needing, and that's not going to meet it. And you can't force somebody to work outside of how they typically do it. So, some of that you vet when you're looking for that match, right? But some of it is questions you don't think to ask, or suddenly you're working with them and it's like, okay, well, I thought we were really same page, but now it's going on. So for me, it's if I've referred somebody to a client and, I feel like I've done my vetting and now it's not going smooth, it's okay, let me step in, let me talk to that vendor again, figure out what's going on, speak the frustration, see if there's a place we can meet. I had a conversation recently and all it simply was if you could just send us a summary at the end of the week of the work being done, that would help so much. And so I think a lot of that, again, hopefully you vet out, but it's important that having those conversations once you are starting to work with a vendor, a lot of times you've done that due diligence and it's like, this is the best option, this is the right option, but we're bumping heads and what's going on. Those conversations are really important to continue to have and finding a way to see if we can meet in the middle on that.
I too often see people ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater rather than just ask a question. Hey,
Yeah.
could you send us the summary? I think that would really, there's some frustration here. I don't know what's going on. We had a vendor we recently onboarded to our team to do a very specific project. And it was like 400 emails they were sending, carbon copying the world.
Oh.
It was making, my project manager said, I will never work with them again because they're making me crazy.
Yeah,
and
that's a lot.
We tend to work through with our clients. We do weekly meetings or bi-weekly, depending on the nature of the project. And we get on the same page. There's an agenda. We go through the questions. We summarize it. And we're like seeing eyeball to eyeball. Yep, we're understanding you had a chance to ask your questions. And they were using all this technical jargon in these emails that we didn't understand. And then there was all this miscommunication. And I finally called the sales guy that I worked with to make the selection and bring it on. I'm like, dude, we got to cool it with emails because you're making everybody crazy and we can't understand the words you're using. And he said, well, this is kind of how we work. It'll get better as we get into the project. But man, the kickoff phase was exhausting.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a lot. Ooh, I'm so anti-email. It's making me sweat. I'm just kidding. But I mean, I think that's the big thing is understanding that as a vendor or anybody that you're wanting to work with. I feel like that's where the biggest hiccup is that communication piece of it. Because ultimately, are they going to deliver on the service that you hired them for? Most likely, because you vetted that they have the capabilities of doing that. But yeah, CCing on emails, just to emails, like if that's their process and that doesn't work with how your business works, that's just, I mean, such a point of conflict and a reason that you ultimately would maybe move forward with a different vendor or cancel that and figure something else out. So that's really important.
But I think your point coming back to it was the most important one out of all of this is if we're the paying client, our job is to get what we need from the process, not to be a victim of the process, to say, hold on, I'm paying for this. Here's what I'd like to see. And sometimes it's hard to get clear in our heads about what we want to see because we just know we don't want what we're getting.
Yes.
It's like, hold on, let's have a discussion about what we do want. Why is that frustrating? Well, it's probably because what we were expecting was the opposite or just on a different track. And so having the courage, I think in the workplace, there's not enough courage. We're all trying to be too nice. In the Midwest, they call it Midwest nice. Like there's a term for it. But it's okay to be direct and say, here's what I'd like to see. Could we make a change?
Definitely.
Because this isn't working for our team and we're paying you to provide these services.
I think that was one of the biggest things I learned when I stepped into that integrator role. Because right now, at that point, you're managing the day-to-day, right? The business owner's focusing on the high level stuff. Now I'm the one dealing with vendors. So if the business owner's frustrated, somebody on the team's frustrated, I mean, I'm the point of contact for the most part, unless it was delegated to a manager.
Yeah.
But it was learning that I can be short and to the point and I don't need to tiptoe around it, because ultimately, like you're saying, we're paying you for a service and I don't have to be mean about it. But if I've emailed you 5 times about website changes and they're still not done, or, I feel like that's the most common with companies is website updates and things like that. But it's like, okay, I've emailed you 5 times. Can I get a response? And so hopping on a call and saying, hey, what's this expectation? You're not meeting ours. This is what we need. And you don't have to be mean about it, but you need to be straight and to the point about it. And I feel like that's also productive for those conversations. Or maybe people that are struggling with, well, I don't want to say it because I don't want to hurt their feelings. And I don't want them to think that we're like a needy client. I don't think it's being needy if you're being honest about what you expected out of this. And if anything, it makes you a better client because you're speaking your expectations. And instead of just sitting on your hands and not doing anything and then firing them in 3 months and finding a replacement, you're trying
Which
to
takes
resolve the relationship.
gobs of time.
Yes, like that is my worst nightmare of we finally made a decision and now we've broken the relationship and we can't repair it. I'm fast to have those conversations for that reason, because if I've vetted you, I've made a decision that this is the best option for my company, my team, my companies I'm working with. Like I want to make that relationship work, and it can't always work, but it's having that honest conversation and this is frustrating us. That's all you've got to say. How can we fix that? So.
And I think from a vendor perspective, the thing that often makes a huge difference is listen to the words that your clients use.
Mhm.
If they're using members instead of employees, if they're using associates instead of employees, like they use terminology, use their words. It means something to them. They use those words for a reason. Clients versus customers. These little nuances make them feel heard and make them feel like you're a part of their process, their work. And it's little shifts that often cost us near zero effort.
Yeah, that's great advice, because especially with like the clients versus customers, I know that one is just so sensitive to some companies. And so those little nuances can go a long way.
Yeah, and like I'm working with a couple credit unions. Their members are their customers.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have employees rather than team members, because then that gets really confusing. Our members internally, our members externally, and that's
Makes
even.
sense. Yeah.
It's just yeah, little nuanced stuff that can be beneficial. So, okay, so let's take this a little further to where, yes, we're a vendor partner, but really we're a fractional integrated consultant or team member that's not there full time.
Mm-hmm.
This really heightens the stakes, doesn't it?
Definitely. And if you don't have that foundation of meeting somebody in the middle or wherever they're at or whatever that means to them, you're just setting yourself up for failure. I've experienced this, right? You're talking with a business owner that is so excited for this growth and knows what they want to do. And great, we can get it done, and we can get it done in your budget. And all of this makes sense. You go to build the foundation and it's like, okay, I'm not really meeting them where they're at. And instead of ignoring the fact that I don't think I'm there, it's like have that conversation of, is this really what you're ready for? Is this really where you're at? And having those conversations early on really sets you up for success. I've learned this the hard way, so I've learned this better now, but it's really having that initial conversation of, okay, you're saying these things. Is this really where you're at? Are we doing it now? Or is this a goal that overwhelms you and you want to do it, but it scares you? And how can I support you in that? So I think just really understanding that is so important, especially if you in my position, stepping in with a company. One of my clients wants to be $100 million in 10 years. Okay, well, that's a huge goal, right? Are you ready for that? And realizing, yes, you are ready for that. And we've got to run at the speed that's comfortable for the client. But you can talk to others where they've got this great goal and they want it done by the end of the year, and you start implementing things. It's whoa, 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 whoa. And so I've learned from myself, I need to vet that out earlier on, and that sets everybody up for success. But it's shown so clearly in specifically the space I'm at of, are you really there? Are we on the same page? And once you are on the same page, you can get there, you can get it done. But that's really important.
I had a similar experience with a client recently. They're a construction company, and we were scoping out a new salesperson. And they scoped out, because PI takes you through this experience where multiple stakeholders give their input into this ideal candidate. And what everybody said was, we want this really high sense of urgency, very assertive, solid salesperson. Well, we looked at the rest of their team, and they're very collaborative and they're very patient. And there's not a lot of urgency through this organization. And I said, I have a concern. You're scoping someone you all say you want. You're aligned around this goal. But what happens when this person goes and sells 10 big projects? And they said, oh, well, that might be a little faster than we want to grow. And we'd have to really change the structure of the company to do that. He said, is that what you want? Not really. Okay, great. Maybe we need to scope a little more farmer and a little less hunter in terms of a sales approach, where it's a little calmer, a little more nurturing, a little more of a sales consultant and nurturing relationships rather than go get them, tiger. And they went, yeah, that's probably a lot more aligned with where we want to go. And so I think when I think about these external, internal, quasi relationships where we really are operating on both sides of this coin, it's incumbent upon us to ask some really hard questions that employees don't often have the freedom to ask or won't feel the freedom to ask, but challenging our clients on just exactly what you were saying. Do you really want this? I'm going to paint a picture of what that looks like. And they look at the picture and they go, oh, well, maybe not quite.
Exactly. And sometimes you end up and you can get in the middle, right? Where okay, I don't want 100% of this, but 50%. It's like important to have those conversations so that you're building what they actually need or what they want. And I think that example of the salesperson is so important because it really does tie into just overall company growth. It's like, this is a great idea. It can get me where I want to be, but am I ready for that today? And what do I have to do today to feel comfortable with that? Because I think that's a big question to ask business owners too, in either of our spots within this space, right? Is what are you really looking for? What are you really wanting to do? And if it's that, are you ready and prepared to build the foundation that you need to get there? Because the foundation is so important, and most business owners understand maybe a fraction of what that base looks like, but really playing it out. If you want to get to $100 million, you're going to have 50 employees doing these projects. Are you ready for that? And of course, we're not going to snap our fingers and it's tomorrow, but if you never want to have a company that big, okay, well, let's narrow in what the scope looks like. Let's narrow in what the dreams are. And not that we're preventing them from their goals, but we're allowing them, similar in this sales situation you brought up, to have a realistic expectation of what they really want. Because the last thing you want is then to redo something and they're in a spot and that's not at all what they wanted. And you can't really undo what you've done. And if you can, it's not easy and it's going to be really costly. So it's important
Or
to
even
really
we just steal quality of life, right? If we grow too quickly, we get into cash crunch, we get into huge stress components that maybe we were just daydreaming and we didn't really play out what that meant to us. Maybe we wanted to stay a little smaller, a little more boutique at high margins and a great quality of life. And so it's this ebb and flow. So, okay, so I think we've talked through some great scenarios. I think we need to wrap this up with some great tips. So for different people in different periods of their careers, here's one tip that I have noted in my show notes. So have the courage to ask questions about people's preferences, expectations, and goals. And I think that applies to all of us for all these scenarios we've played through.
I mean, any spot in life, you should be asking these things so you're getting to know people. So
yeah. I say that I like to swim in the deep end. That's one of my core aspects of my personality. I don't just want to be acquaintances. I want to know your life goals and I want to know about your family and I want to know your aspirations. And I think the more we go to that level of depth, the more we get the why behind what people are asking us for and what level of urgency they might be carrying.
Definitely. I think that's a great one.
Another one that came to me was using their words. Use their words for the projects, the clients, the employees, the, processes.
Yes.
That really helps make, what is it called? There's a phrase for people that can switch like the way they speak really fluidly. I can't remember it. In the StrengthsFinder language, people with individualization are people that can learn languages really quickly, whether they're actual foreign languages or just cultural norms. It's something that I've always really admired because they just intuitively pick that up. They also are the ones who intuitively get who you are, and they don't need the assessments that most of us need to give us the clip notes. Which is, I think, one of the tips here too, is leverage some kind of assessments because most people don't have that natural intuition to look at each person and just see what makes them tick differently.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think especially smaller companies, I mean, the best way to work best together is some type of assessment, it's especially smaller teams. You're working so closely together and you need to be productive together. So that's a really important one.
I think the thing I've really appreciated over the last 18 years of doing this work is the assessments help us see both sides of the coin. We usually pick up on the dark side of people's personalities, the things that irritate us. But usually, if you look under that rock, that's the key to their talents as well. So the people who talk a lot, guess what? They might be our best storytellers. The people who are kind of abrupt, they're often the ones that have the best sniffer for where are we going to go wrong.
Yes.
And they aren't afraid to say it. And so if we can put them in the way that, shine the light on what's right about them rather than just continually being irritated, sometimes these assessments can help us flip the script. And I just so appreciate that because it can turn this frustration into appreciation that we might be carrying.
And one of the things I've learned is like, okay, this person has this unique strength. And in this specific scenario, we need to leverage that. And so it gives you the opportunity to have fresh set of eyes, fresh set of ears, a whole new idea from somebody. And otherwise you wouldn't have gotten there maybe with the team of people that you were going to discuss something. So it's really cool how that can happen. And like you're saying, okay, this really frustrated me about this person, but I realized why it's that way and why in these other scenarios, I love when they do these things. So they're fun. Do an assessment if you haven't done one.
Totally. So let's see, I'm going to bring up our contact information and let people know how they can reach us. I am so appreciative, Paisley, of the time that we have spent together. I think it's extremely beneficial. This topic is a huge one, and it's so personally meaningful to me because it is one of our core values. But I think we could have gone a half a day on these insights. Thanks for everyone for engaging in the abridged version. If you'd like to learn more about Paisley and her work at the Fractional Wave, you can get a hold of her. This is her email address, paisley@thefractionalwave.com. If you'd like to learn more about Predictive Index or any of the work I'm doing to help build dream teams, I am M. Ortiz at activatehcg, like humancapitalgroup.com. You can find both of us on LinkedIn, and I hope you will join us for a future episode of You've Got People Problems. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of You've Got People Problems. If you got something out of the conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with the other leaders in your network, because let's face it, we all have people problems. You can watch full episodes on YouTube or listen on your favorite podcast app. But either way, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.